Night School's Caton Bradar and Jeremy Plunk here at Monmouth Park, one of the summer destinations. And when you think about summer racing, you think about the turf a lot of times. And this week at Night School, we're talking about turf handicapping. Caton, what are some of the things you're looking for in a horse racing on the turf?
Well, one of the first things I'm going to look at is pedigree. Obviously, there are some outstanding turf sires, but you do see in the bloodlines time after time that certain horses are bred to take to the grass versus others. So I do follow that, just follow pedigrees in general. Then I also look at trainers, believe it or not, because there are certain trainers that seem to either intuitively or through experience know exactly when to put horses on the turf and what types of horses transfer well to the turf. So trainers to me are very important. For instance, I see a Christophe Clement, I'm all over it. He just knows his turf horses. And then thirdly, I often look for horses that seem to have some potential, good works in the morning that never materialize in the afternoon. They just seem to struggle on the dirt. A lot of times it's a matter of surface. The horse hasn't found the surface he's comfortable on. So sometimes even if a horse doesn't have a pedigree for the grass, but seems to have turned in some good works and have a little ability, but just hasn't been able to seal the deal with a good effort, those are the types of horses I'm real intrigued to see how they'll do on the grass.
She talks about horses who are running on the dirt most of their career but then start showing up on the turf. A lot of times there'll be some horses that have some foot problems. The turf is generally a little more forgiving on a horse's feet than the dirt course can be. The turf foot is something you hear about from a pedigree standpoint. We had Gary Stevens in Night School last year. He kind of discussed it as a saucer, like a plate, that a turf foot looks kind of flat and round. Can someone identify a turf foot looking at a horse in the paddock?
Well, for sure, if you see that plate, that big flat foot, that can often be a really good turf foot. So that one is a little easier to spot. But I would also say that there are some horses that have little teeny tiny feet. And you can see that too pretty easily when you look at the horse and you just say, well, boy, look, this is little bitty feet. Or you even look at the footprints if they happen to be walking through sand. You can see that they just appear much smaller than the average horse in the ring. Those horses also often handle the turf really well because I think, again, they may have some hoof problems and it's just a more comfortable surface for them.
Caton talks a lot about from the horsewoman and the horseman's side of things when it comes to handicapping that way. The great thing about handicapping, there's a lot of ways to do it, and I'm more of a paper handicapper. One of the things, if you're just a form player, to look for when handicapping turf racing, how a horse finishes. If you can get those closing fractions in their previous races, it takes a turn of foot to win races on the turf a lot of times. Turn of foot is that acceleration, that burst. Long-winded, grinding type horses, not necessarily they're great turf horses. Those horses who can spurt and excel and punch out the competition late are the ones I'm usually looking for, especially in a shorter distance turf race.
Well, and interestingly enough, the horses too that on the dirt are showing some speed and then fading, oftentimes will seem to be able to relax and use their speed to their advantage on the grass. Especially if they're meant for the grass, they're more comfortable, they just seem to relax and they're more effective with their speed. So I definitely like that tactical speed, that turn of foot as well. And I know people most of the time think because a lot of grass races are longer distance races rather than the sprints that you should be looking for a horse that comes from off the pace, but that's not always going to transfer very well. That's not usually the horse that wins the race. I find horses that can either stalk or show speed are usually better able to adjust on the turf.
Any way you slice it, we've got three surfaces in racing: dirt, synthetic, and turf. And few will argue that the most majestic of all racing and the purest is the turf racing. That's why we love it so much.